Right, hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome. I'm going to do an afternoon story based on Harris Burdick's pictures, one of them anyway, with his accompanying caption. The one that I have written about is Mr. Linden's library. I hope you can see that okay. The caption is, he had warned her about the book. Now it was too late. And you can see a book open here with some kind of plant life growing from it. And of course she's sleeping. There's a very strong feel of a fairy tale about the picture, which I found it difficult getting away from Sleeping Beauty. But I went down the more botanical idea with a connection to fantasy sort of style, but also hinting slightly at fairy tale as well. My piece is entitled Legends of Nature. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Right. Legends of Nature. Eloise visited the village library at lunchtime, called Mr. Linden's library. It was old, with wooden flooring, which was smooth, burnished and worn, where people had walked over the years. The wood creaked as Eloise lightly walked across the floor with her handbag slung over one shoulder. She glanced at the wooden shelving that towered and covered every wall. Each shelf was crammed full of books with spines thick to thin or petite to tall. Eloise crept over to the gardening and botanical section. She had a great interest in the language of flowers, their meanings, origin, and Latin names. Eloise stood there in the quietness, her eyes scanning over the spines of the book titles, a window behind her beaming afternoon light that warmed her back. She started to lift down various books one after another. The smell of pepper and musty paper wafted to her nose as she opened book after book, flicking through the pages. Eloise stopped at a page of one book and gazed at a picture. She licked her finger and thumb, rubbing the corner of the page, ready to turn over. Suddenly, Eloise's eyes caught sight of another book on the shelf. She tilted her head to read the spine, which was titled Legends of Nature. Eloise quickly put the book back that she held in her hands and stood on her tiptoes and reached for the intriguing book that had caught her eyes. Eloise opened the book, and the spine stretched and cracked. The book seemed to have not been opened for years. Her eyes bright as bulbs, with the pupils moving from left to right with each line she read. She turned page after page with strange myths and legends of various species of plants that can be infused and amalgamated with a human, either by touch or digestion. The illustrations that accompanied the text were sinister and eerie, drawn in black and white, depicting the horrendous outcome of each plant's ability. A lot of the plants in the book were assumed to be extinct. One plant called Lariophyritus really caught Eloise's attention. According to the information, the plant, which bared bright blue and white striped blossoms, produced seeds that, if ingested, acted like a parasite. The text stated, once digested, the seeds release an enzyme that enters the bloodstream. After a couple of hours of ingestion, the parasite latches onto the spine. Another hour later, small roots start growing from the spine, piercing through the skin of the back. The latter growth is rapid, where two large leaf wings are formed, giving a human the ability of flight. Eloise had a shiver up her spine, and she twitched. Eloise frowned, and her stern eyes in a stare. Her right hand twiddled with her long brown hair. Abruptly, a shadow appeared, and she felt a presence behind her, followed by a man clearing his throat. "Excuse me, ma'am." Eloise quickly spun around and gasped, and the book fell to the floor, and a small brown envelope popped out from the back sleeve. "Oh, Mr. Linden, where did you come from?" She bent down and picked up the book and the envelope from the floor. Mr. Linden took a deep breath, then said, "Sorry for startling you." Eloise smiled. "That's okay. I was so engrossed in this book." Mr. Linden scratched his head and looked at the book Eloise was holding. "Oh, I wondered where that book went to." He pointed and wagged his index finger and continued, "That particular book must always be kept in the library." Eloise quickly replied, "Really? Why?" Mr. Linden wore glasses with chains on either side. He tilted his head down and peered over the top of the rim. That book should not be trifled with, and it is very old, and I do not want it damaged." Eloise, holding the book, looked down to its front cover. "Oh, that's a shame. It is a very good book." Eloise looked back up at Mr. Linden and continued, "I'll read from the book for a little longer and put it back afterwards." Mr. Linden nodded. "Fair enough. I'll be at the desk if you need any assistance." Eloise smiled and Mr. Linden walked off. A beautiful quietness cloaked the library, which gave a secret moment as Eloise opened the book and continued to read. The book gave recipes to various plants with medicinal properties. Eloise really wanted to take the book home to properly read it. She glanced behind her, then opened her handbag and slipped the book inside. She mumbled to herself, "I'll bring it back in a few days." Eloise crept back over the wooden flooring and towards the exit door. Suddenly, Mr. Linden, who was sorting out a pile of books, looked up and said, "Goodbye. I will see you same time next week." Eloise turned her head with her hand covering the top of her handbag. She nodded her head. "Oh, yes. See you again, Mr. Linden." Her eyes focused on the door as she swiftly walked out. Eloise had returned home, and later that afternoon she decided to take the book upstairs to her bedroom. It was a dull, overcast afternoon, and she set the book on her mahogany bedside cabinet. Eloise sat on the bed and swung her legs up on top, resting her back at an upright position, leaning against a pillow. "Ah, that's better." She lifted her book from the cabinet and gently opened the book. The small brown envelope slid out onto her stomach. "Oh, what's this?" The envelope had handwriting in ink on the front that read, "Lario seeds." Eloise folded back the top flap and peered in. There were approximately 30 tiny seeds. She quickly set the envelope on her bedside cabinet. She lifted the book and flicked through to the page she had been reading in the library, which was about the plant Lariophyritus. Eloise read the chapter about the various heroes that consumed lario seeds to grow leaf wings, which aided them to defeat their enemies. Eloise lifted her head and gazed out the window. The smell and scented aroma of herbs blew in through her window from the country garden. The afternoon rain had released a fresh, green, leafy smell, sweet with lavender, rosemary, and mint in the air. The wooden lattice work on the high old stone wall had clematis, mental beauty, growing and blossoming its large 8-petal blooms of magenta and lilac. Eloise, in a daze, started to twiddle with her wavy brown hair. She turned her head and looked at the small envelope on the bedside cabinet. Eloise scrunched her eyebrows as she lifted the envelope into her hand. She took a deep breath and opened and tilted the envelope onto its side and proceeded to tap it. A few seeds dropped out onto her palm. Her eyes squinted as she looked closely and mumbled to herself, "It is probably a lot of nonsense." Eloise licked her finger and pressed it down on a seed and lifted it up. And without hesitation, she licked the seed off her finger and swallowed it. Eloise nestled down, lying flat on her bed, and she closed her eyes. The book lay open beside her. The sun started to set as Eloise lay sleeping with one hand hung over the edge of her bed. The sunlight moved and dimmed as it crept from one side of the bed to the other, where deep golden orange warmed the walls of her bedroom. Several hours passed and Eloise started to groan in pain, tossing and turning. She knocked the book off the bed, hitting the floor with a thud. She sprung her eyes open. Eloise quickly sat up on the edge of the bed and stretched her arm as far around to her back as possible and rubbed. "Ah, so stiff. I must have slept funny." Eloise looked to the floor and noticed the book and lifted it back up onto the bed and opened it. It was now dark, and she turned on the bedside cabinet lamp and lay back down, and her hand hung back over the edge of the bed. The book was open with the front cover laying over her arm. Eloise sighed. "My back is really sore." She closed her eyes and started to drift back asleep when a sharp pain pierced her back. She sprung back up and stretched her arm around her back and felt a protrusion bulging from her spine. Abruptly, sapling growths shot out from her back, splatting droplets of blood on her white sheets. Eloise screamed as she stood up. In a matter of 10 minutes, she had grown large leaf wings. Eloise stood there. Her breath was heavy. Hot flushes flowed from her feet to her head. Her heart was racing. Whilst she stood, Eloise gently felt a spirit hand take her hand. She could not see the spirit, but she felt it, and she twirled the spirit around as if dancing. Eloise's heart lifted, and she felt a rush of energy through her body. Eloise could now control the leaf wings as she started to flap them with sudden puffs of wind, which flapped and rippled the bedroom curtains. The book, which still lay open on the bed, started to grow plants that appeared from its very pages, wriggling and twisting, reaching into the air like long vines. It wrapped and flowed around Eloise. Eloise felt an impulse as she looked to the window. Outside the moon shone bright, with needle-sparkle stars piercing and lancing through the deep blue velvet. Thus, she walked over and lifted the sash window open as far as it could go. She climbed up onto the windowsill and leaped into the air, where her wings stretched open and caught her, and she glided as light as a feather in the night air. Eloise danced and danced in the sky, flowing around as the sun rose in tints of daytime colour, her leaf wings absorbing and harnessing every shaft and ray of sunlight, a photosynthesis which gave her pure energy. But like the new life of the awakening butterfly, it was short-lived, life that took her by the hand. Eloise flew back in through the window, exhausted. The wing leaves attached to her back soon withered and crumbled away. Soon enough, Eloise lay back on her bed, where she fell asleep. And she slept and slept. But unlike Sleeping Beauty, no one could wake her. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. It belongs to another story that I'm doing based on the same book about three teenagers, the adventures of the Jays 3. And then the mystery of that book is in one of the chapters in that story as well. But I hope you enjoyed that short story. And yes, thank you for listening anyway. Thanks.